Germany is proposing what is being called honeycomb migration models to reduce the asylum crisis. The controversial plan would divide sections of the EU into units, with refugees only allowed to move between one or two regions once they arrive. That's the theory behind it. This, of course, comes, as I mentioned a moment ago, as we discover 564 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday. That brings this year's total to more than 30,000. Wow. Let's speak with Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader, Reform UK, all-round good bloke. Ben, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I said about an hour ago when we first mentioned this story, it's funny, isn't it, how these figures now just pass us by because they're happening almost on a daily basis.
We're inured to them, aren't we? Illegal migration is no longer something which we're shocked by. It's part of our daily lives, and we just accept the numbers as they come in. But the 30,000 to which you referred, apart from the criminal and terroristic potential elements amongst them that we should be very concerned about, just the 30,000 alone themselves are going to cost the Exchequer £1.5 billion a year. Just that 30,000. You know, and that's the entire saving that they wish to make on the winter fuel allowance.
Sure.
It's very much the entire tax take that they want to make on by putting VAT on school fees. If they could just get a grip of the borders, we'd be better off as a country at the thick end of £10 billion a year. And if they could then deport the near million illegal migrants who are already in this country, many of whom are getting benefits, we'd be better off by the thick end of nearly another £20 billion per annum.
Yeah.
You're talking about the thick end of 30 billion. You know, it's just in the context of the budget, I mention it. You know, there's a massive saving by looking after your borders, by protecting the country's borders. We should be horrified.
Yeah, there was no mention in the budget about this amount of money being spent, was there?
No.
And I doubt that they will ever fess up and say it out loud in the same way that Yvette Cooper, in the time, I know she's only been there for, well, it's still, what, 4 or 5 months now, has never once referenced channel crossing. She keeps talking about smashing gangs.
Yeah, quite. And they don't talk about illegal migrants. They talk about irregular migration.
Yeah, they love that phrase, irregular migration.
Yeah, they love that. Yeah.
What about this proposal in Germany then, Ben? This honeycomb migration model. So it's almost sections off the possibilities for where migrants can go, presumably with the effect of firstly knowing where people are, I'm assuming this is the German thinking, and secondly maybe putting people off.
So when I first read about it, I thought, oh, that's clever. I mean, the essential idea is that you take illegal migrants from countries that you're most proximate with and not from others, so that the southern European countries would take North Africans in effect. The Balkan countries would potentially take Syrians and people coming through Turkey. And Germany would restrict itself very cleverly to people just coming in from Ukraine, who ethnically and culturally and perhaps even economically are easier to meld into German society. But then when and at that level, I thought it was quite clever, because what it would do is really make the Italians and Spanish and Greeks sit up and think, oh, my goodness, we better get a grip of people coming into our own country because they're not going to leave. Once they're here, they're going to stay here. But of course, it's as clever as it is daft, because essentially what they simply need to do, Ian, and I think Germany's had a tilt at this as well, is enforce their own borders. No illegal migrants should enter Germany, whether they come from Poland or any other proximate country. No illegal migrants should be entering Italy, the Balkans, Greece. There should just be a recognition by governments across Europe, including the United Kingdom, that there's only one way people should enter your country, and that is with your permission.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
But it seems that the very obvious logic that you point to, Ben, I don't know how this happens, particularly in EU politics. Is there a gene that is removed from political thinking and common sense in these areas, so that the very obvious thing you just stated is not thought about because they are no longer capable of... The groupthink thing has got to them. They're not capable of thinking in that kind of way.
I mean, I think there are a couple of things going on with the EU. The first one is exactly as you put it, the groupthink, where ideologically, because the EU is all about, frankly, the ending of nation states, it's the creation of a greater Europe under the direction of Brussels, because they've bought completely into that narrative.
Of course.
Immigration has never been a big issue for them because they couldn't care less whether you're French, German, Italian, and frankly, you might as well be Syrian or Libyan, or who cares? And they've never had an eye on the cultural impact that vast numbers of people coming into your country will have if there's no program for integration. Actually, you can't cope with vast numbers in the way that have been coming in, whether or not you've got integration programs. And then, of course, they've got the other issue with which they're at sixes and sevens with themselves, which is this notion of taking down borders for EU member states, which again, I think was a move towards ending the existence of nation states, the creation of a greater European country. But of course, when you take down the Italian border, the German border, French border, and so on, you make it very, very easy for illegal migrants to do whatever they wish, for people smugglers to do whatever they wish. And so they're wrestling now with their ideological imperatives, which are being so drastically trumped by the economic, cultural, criminal threats that the countries now face as a result of that ideology. So that, you know, they're all over the place.
Not really need to... Yeah, you brilliantly articulate, because the word borders is like a swear word over there, isn't it? You know, you can't.
It is.
You start talking about borders in Brussels, in the Parliament, and people start to almost melt and discombobulate. They can't fathom the idea that anybody would want such a horrendous thing as a nation state. Andy in Derby, Ben, while you're with us, I might as well ask you this. He says, can anyone tell us what's happened to Martin Hewitt and what he's been doing for the past month, the new head of border security? Has he smashed any gangs? It's a very good point. I'd forgotten about Mr. Hewitt, who was given this impressive role. I'm sure it's got a very big salary attached to it, and maybe some generous terms and conditions that go with the job as well. Where is he? Would he not be the man commenting on stories like 30,000 that we're hearing today?
I imagine he's holding his head in his hands thinking, how the hell does he deal with this? Yeah. And I think he did actually make a bit of an admission when he was appointed that the job is impossible to fulfill. I think he more or less said that, didn't he? And of course he's right, because the whole point behind the Border Security Command is to break the people smuggling gangs in Europe. But there's the clue, they're in Europe, they're not in the United Kingdom. Hewitt is sitting in the United Kingdom. How is he going to tackle gangs over which he has no jurisdiction?
Correct, yes.
The whole thing was, you know, virtue signalling, window dressing nonsense from the Labour Party.
Yeah, indeed. It's almost as straightforward as that. Listen, Ben, it's always great to gauge your views on these things. Thank you, Ben Habib. He is, of course, the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK.